Hi, everyone. Chad Burton and Billy Tarasio here from Modern Law Practice. How are you doing today, Billy?
Doing okay.
Yeah, just okay. Not your normal, bubbly, exuberant self.
Honestly, it's been kind of a rough week. It's not our topic for today, but we'll get to it. A long-term associate gave notice, and it's hard. It's emotional. It's potentially disruptive. He's starting his own firm, so I haven't lost him to a competitor, which
Right.
would have been, I guess, worse. It's more like a kiddo leaving the nest, but it still sucks.
Right. Okay. So we'll save that. Yeah, let's save it for another day because I mean the person's still around, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we want to wait, make sure they're out, so that we can capture all of the fun for our conversation and make sure we don't. I mean, we can always do multi-part discussions, but we'll try to pack it into one
It is a
discussion
big
for.
deal.
Yeah.
Like it
Oh,
is a
it's a
big
massive
deal
issue.
and it happens. And so I do think like it's a topic that's absolutely worthy of a couple days discussion. But like that's not what's on tap today because we found when looking at our YouTube channel that like there just was not enough free accessible information about intake, shockingly,
Yeah.
on our YouTube channel.
Right. Because we've got the course. We've got like, I don't know, 40 plus lessons within the intake course, but we don't talk about intake on the YouTube channel a lot. So we want to do that. And different angles that we can kind of weave in and out of. But and I think some things that are relevant to stuff you've gone through, because I mean you know I think you've experienced in different waves over the course of the life of your firm of intake people being in-house. And I always want to say outhouse, but outsourced, like in-house and outsourced. Outsourced is better.
Mhm.
Um, and so you've experienced that. You've done hybrid approaches. So kind of, I guess maybe where are you today with intake?
Yeah, so today I've got both. I've got an outsourced intake team that is through Modern Law Practice, and I've got an internal full-time person. And the reason that I do that is because intake is it's just more cost effective for me at this point with the number of leads I have and the amount of work I have them doing because I have intake handle NPS, I have intake handle reviews, I have intake handling client service calls to existing clients. So it's just so much work that having it all outsourced did not make sense. But having it outsourced and having that ability is so important because intake people get sick. Intake people are on the other line. Like you really want the
Right.
coverage. I wanted the coverage of unlimited resources that comes from outsourced, but not the cost because I have them doing so much.
Right. And there's a balance between when, I mean, and every firm's kind of got a different level of where the balance is of internal versus external. Because I mean, there can be some, you know, small firms like solos that have internal intake, but as we've talked about and we dive super deep into in the course aspect of it, the idea of like, what does the role of that person look like, especially in a really small firm where they become, they're, an office manager or legal assistant, kind of jack of all trades, where they're trying to process leads while handling client needs, while handling vendors, while handling, and so kind of focusing in that person. And so what you've done is you have a dedicated person internally. Do you have more than one person or just one person at this point?
I'm looking to bring on a second person
Okay.
because of what we talked about with the retail space
Right.
in
Yeah.
another
Last week. Yeah.
video. But I can do it right now. If I wasn't doing that retail space, I could do it with one full-time person plus our outsourced team.
Right. Okay. So you've got one internal person and then, our outsourced intake service as a backup.
Mhm.
So the challenge that exists, especially when you're a busy firm and you have lots of leads coming through, and you have a dedicated person, and this is kind of like, in a way, akin to what we talked about a couple weeks ago about the managing attorney when you're trying to replicate yourself within the firm. Oftentimes, especially when people start out their firm and they build it from the ground up, they are taking calls initially and they're really good at selling themselves. And even if it's that, that initial intake call that the lawyer's handling, really good at that. So over time, as you grow, you have to figure out how to replicate that with an internal person. And so how did you go about that this time with your internal intake person?
So what you said, I think, is super important. And it all comes down to,
To be
I
expected.
think,
Yeah.
it all comes down to intentionality. When you are answering the phone because you need clients and you're paying attention to the person on the other end of the line because you've just started up and you need clients, you're going to do a fantastic and outstanding job. Once you have other work to do and you're distracted and you're not giving intake leads your attention, that's when you're no longer effective. The same is true for consultations. The same is true for everything. The same is true for when you hire a legal assistant and you have them doing many things. And now when the phone rings, they're being interrupted. So the key component is, how do you make sure you have someone whose whole job is to give attention and intention to the leads that are contacting your firm?
Yep. And so, and that person, and that requires, so what kind of person is that? Like, I mean, because it's a sales role is what we're talking about. And, so, to the extent you want to dive into like, your person right now, like what, drew you to hire this person, the personality wise, like all that kind of fun stuff.
So the person that I hired right now is a rock star. And the thing is, you're looking for a rock star.
Is she really a rock star? Like, how long has she been around?
She really is.
How long has she been there?
I think we're going on 8 months or something.
So because it's really easy to say somebody's a rock star early on and then the test of time goes by for a little bit and you're like, well, they good start, great start, but then they fell off. So legitimately, you think this person is great?
Yeah. Like she talks me into stuff.
That's like what? Like, give me an example.
Okay. So the best example is, well, let me tell you about her first. Like, she's so cool. We do video interviews and, video cover letters, I mean, and she lives in Mexico. She has a college degree from a college in the state of Florida. She's articulate. She studied linguistics. She's very educated and very professional and very put together, but she's got an accent, which, for some people would be a massive fail, but her accent sounds more like Spanish than what you would think of with typical Mexico Spanish. Like, she just sounds sophisticated, even though it can be a little difficult to understand her sometimes. But anyway, so she's great. She's great. She's great. She's great. You're looking at me, you're giving me a bad look. Did you think that was racist?
No, it's fine. I think, I don't know. We won't, let's move on. No, but so what's her name? Can we give her a name?
Yeah, her name's Gabriela.
Gabriela. So let's talk about Gabriela. So she's, so she lives in Mexico. Is she always going to be remote?
Nope. She's actually relocating here because she's going to run my retail store.
Got it. Okay, good. That's the layer I wanted. So, and this is when we get into kind of like the responsibility part of, this person. So Gabriella is doing a great job. She's, scheduling consultations, doing all the things an intake person. What was the training process like for her? How did that go?
So the first thing I had her do was watch the course. And the course, the online course that we have, there's one specific section that is for people, that is for intake specialists, the people within your law firm. And I actually had her watch the entire thing, which included, sections for law firm owners, sections for attorneys, how the consultation works, because I wanted her to have the context of everything. But really, you could get away with just having people watch the intake specialist training course, but that's definitely not enough.
Right. Because I like the whole watch the other parts too, because I think that's where when people hire or internal salespeople for intake effectively, the person doesn't fully appreciate the firm. And this is where the difference between you as the law firm owner who picked up the phone when you started the firm and could be like, here's what I do, blah, blah, blah. It's really easy to sell people from that standpoint, where somebody that's new to the firm doesn't fully appreciate kind of the magic of the firm or the special sauce of what you do. That's hard to sell at that point. And so you really have to, that's one of the things we do with our, outsource intake, is really make sure they spend time getting to know the law firm. So when people ask questions, they can talk about it intelligently. Right. So she's got that. She did that. And then you didn't stop with the course though. What else did you do?
No, we didn't stop with the course. Then I had her listen to other recordings. Okay. Then I had her start listening to her own recordings. Then I listened to her recordings and gave her specific feedback. And I still do that. I still spot check her calls and give her feedback.
Because the idea being that you can't just give somebody a round of training and then let them, be free baby bird, go do your job and they'll be perfect at it. Because I'm assuming when she started off, she wasn't this rock star. She may have been cool, super cool, because she speaks how many languages, like 3 or 4.
Right.
Yeah. She may be super cool, but she could not have been perfect at executing the intake model.
No, there were lots of problems. There were lots of problems, which you must anticipate. Like that's just part of the deal. This is not, so Gabriella is a overachiever. She's a high expectations, hard worker, competitive, green personality, which is a super big picture personality. The other people that I've had in the intake role have been people who have been my former nannies, people who are very nurturing, very like people who are great at emotionally connecting. And Gabriella's style on the phone is different from their style on the phone, which is interesting. And like, I had to learn that not everybody has to do this the exact same way. Everybody has to do this the best way that works for them. So normally I want my intake people to like listen a lot. And I've noticed in Gabriella's calls, she talks like 75% of the time.
But what is she talking about? What is she doing?
She's talking about how great the firm is, how great the attorney is, how we can absolutely help them, how we can get them in, when's the best time for them. Like she's just more like your typical salesperson. Even though she has 0 sales training, she has that personality, the personality that will never let you stop, that will just keep like, how can I help you? And how can we make this work? And she's fantastic. And she's talked me into things. And that's what we were talking about before, where so we're using LSA leads. We've talked about that. LSA leads are pay per lead through Google, hyper local, expensive. I want an ROI, easy to track, easy to measure. So I want an ROI. And at one point I told her, like, these people are more likely to want free consultations. They're less likely to sign up right away. So they're not as high a quality of lead as somebody who's referred to the firm. But I told her I might be willing to try free consults with these people because I wanted to see if I could get an ROI. Well, she talked me into doing this free consultation right before a retreat. I don't even know how she did it. Like, I really didn't have time, but she's like, I think he's a high prospect for a hire. I really think that like we can help him. Like, it's important that we get him in soon. And I'm like, okay, and then she's like, fantastic, because he wants to meet in Peoria, really wants to be in person. And you're going to be there for the retreat tomorrow. So we can do 9:00, which is right before the retreat. We were doing photos at 10 with the whole team, but she talked me into it. And, I did the free consultation with this guy in person and he signed up that day and she ended up being great, but I was just so impressed with her skills.
Got it. Very good. Okay. So what made you decide to kind of bring her into this, retail model that you're working on? Because those are different roles.
Sort of. I see the retail model's role as in-person intake. So it's going to be at this outdoor mall that's super high traffic, and the advertising is going to be really about branding for modern law, and then also selling transactional, smaller modern law express type packages. And so if people are walking in from being outside or they're calling in, the intake people really have the same exact job: listen to their story, get them for the consult, or sell them some sort of package.
Yeah, she'll still be doing the kind of regular intake stuff while she's there.
Yes, but that's why I need another person.
So to kind of close the loop on the in-house and outsource piece, like how do the two interact? Like what's the logistically?
Yeah, logistically, they interact on Slack and the whole firm interacts on Slack. So we're talking about leads on intake. We're talking about initial consultations in the initial consultation channel, and they're collaborating and working back and forth. So our outsourced team, who are individuals, are speaking to her. Hey, Gabriella, I got a call from so-and-so who you talked to earlier. Are you available to transfer? Gabriella might say, no, I'm on with another lead, but would you mind scheduling them with so-and-so? So they're truly interacting and collaborating.
So it's not just a scenario where, she's at lunch or whatever, it hasn't started for the day because intake can answer earlier. Like it's not just kind of like, oh, the phone rings 2 times and Gabriella misses it, so it goes to outsource intake. It's more interactive than that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like having this outsourced team with, I don't know, 6 or 7 trained people who know my law firm inside and out just magnifies the power of intake. It ensures that somebody who has the time and intention to pay to these people gets it done.
So, okay, so you want to bring on a second intake person, you mentioned earlier. What's your game plan on uh, embedding that person into the firm? Because are they going to be local, remote,
Yeah, they're
again?
local.
Okay,
So this person actually applied for a legal assistant role, but when I met him and our team met him, it was clear that he was somebody he would do really, really well at interaction. And the other thing is, I don't know if we've talked about my referral program, but the referral program is pretty robust and it's in development. And it's also something that really belongs in that client intake team. So
right.
as I'm adding responsibilities to the team needs to be stronger.
Got it. So you're gonna like, I mean, and this person is gonna be part of the retail model.
Part of the retail model, part of the intake team. So, as the leads grow and as the cost grows, the gross revenue grows, and we're allocating a certain amount of money to a marketing department that is marketing and sales, which includes intake. And so it just makes sense as that gets more sophisticated, you're going to need more resources in terms of humans.
Right. And so how do you decide when to hire the next human in this scenario? Like
Well, I
what data
wasn't
points are you
looking.
looking at? Kind of what's driving that decision?
I wasn't looking for an intake person when I decided to add Daniel to intake. I was looking for a legal assistant,
Right.
but his skills and ability and essence he was somebody like sometimes somebody applies for a job and they don't meet your criteria exactly, but they're so talented, like they're such a good fit. They're so like you need them. You just know that you need them and then you find the right spot for them. And that's what happened with him.
Got it. So this is not the type of scenario that, it's like, okay, we know that Gabriella can handle X number of leads, per day or month. And we need, those are growing. It's because her role is changing too, in the sense that it's moving, it's still dedicated to intake, but it's not just going to be answering calls or processing leads all the time in the traditional way she's doing now, because even if she's in the retail store doing something similar, it's different because there's going to be people walking in and there's going to be the equivalent of somebody browsing on the website, except I assume this is how people type. And, but they're going to walk into the store and be like, what's this? And kind of, gaze and realize that they, can't buy clothes or whatever it is they're looking for. And leave. So that's going to take away time. So it's she's got a different role.
Right. And the office hours are different too, because you're looking at retail hours. So you've got to have more coverage.
Right. You need weekend time, evenings, things like that to make that an adventure. Cool. So anything else before we wrap up that, and kind of this intake adventure that we should chat about today?
Well, okay. So let's talk about how to hire your intake person. So when to hire an intake person. So the first step is you don't have someone inside your firm who can dedicate full attention to intake. Your first step is to outsource it to somebody like our firm, Modern Law Practices Intake System, because you will pay less than hiring a full-time person. They are trained for you, so you're not stumbling upon figuring that out
Right.
yourself. You don't have to hire. Like, it's the next step if you don't have an intake person in-house. Then once your volume and bill gets to a certain point where it makes sense for you to hire internally, that's probably when you should hire internal. And I think you should still leave Modern Law Intake as a great overflow, because people go on vacation, people get sick, people go to lunch,
Right.
people are on the phone. You want that full-time coverage. When you go to hire internally, you want to post a specific job description talking very specifically about your firm. And if you, this is a resource that we have that we can give to you. It's part of the course. It might even be on our website for free, but you want to post your job description and you want to go through an interview process and really give time and attention to getting the right intake person on your team, because this person will make you so much money if you hire and train the right person. And if you don't, you will be literally losing money, like bleeding money, like holes in your bucket.
Right. So I didn't know where you're going with the holes thing. So holes in your bucket. Got it. So Gabrielle, so with that example there, because yeah, it's easy to kind of jump in and be like, this human can have conversations, seems personable, seems organized enough. Okay, go. Like, you're effectively describing, a pretty decent standard or a higher standard for this role because it's so important. How do you distinguish between that idea of like a Gabriella versus somebody who may just be average?
Two things: stats and listen to recordings, and then have a 30, 60, and 90-day ramp up period where this is a probationary period where everybody's trying it out. Like, if you hire somebody without that ramp up, like as a divorce attorney, you've eloped, you've gotten married. Yes, you can get divorced, but divorce sucks and you want to avoid that. So you really want to take your time dating first. Call this 90-day period your probation time, where you two are really getting to know each other and determine if this is a good fit. Like, even if you follow the very best practices of hiring, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to hire the wrong
Right.
people. And it is better for you to go in curious and open-minded. Like you said earlier on, you don't want to determine this person's a rock star and then go in with, rose-colored glasses. Like, look at it critically, because if you've hired the wrong person for your firm, the best thing you can do is let them go early.
Right. And having that conversation with the person up front as to, because there's this, I think, a perception that kind of a traditional 90-day probationary period is a standard thing that people have. And yes, it's meaningful, and but I think in a lot of organizations, it's really a checking the box, like, oh, you're not, you haven't angered everybody, you don't steal people's food from the fridge, or whatever it is, like that, matters within the organization. But if you're having the conversation with this potential intake person to say, this is what the 90-day period looks like, and if they're not all in on the concept, it helps people self-select out, because you're saying, look, we're looking at this really critical, and if you suck, you're not going to be around. And if you don't listen and you don't adopt our methodologies, so if that person is thinking, okay, I just need a job and it'll be fine, and I just need, if I can get a couple years in, that'd be awesome. Like, if they know that this could be super short term unless they're fully dedicated to it, that will help you weed people out who may not otherwise be good fits. Help them self-select out.
Absolutely. And then we have specific benchmarks. At 30 days, here's what you should know, and here's how you should be performing. And if you haven't hit that benchmark, we're going to coach you, and we're going to figure out, is it just that we failed to train you? Is
Right.
it we haven't given this enough attention, or what is it? And then the other thing is, by having an outsourced team, you are less desperate because you've got somebody answering your phone.
Right. Yes. And actually, we've had that with our existing intake clients, where they have experimented back and forth with in-house and outsourced, where if the in-house person doesn't work out, then that's okay, because here's, I mean, actually one very specific example was, we're having conversations about, with this law firm. They said, yeah, it makes sense for you to explore taking this back in-house. No problem. We think that makes sense where you're at right now. And the person that was going to do it in-house fit the criteria, had been with the firm for a little while, was in kind of good shape from that vantage point. And then COVID hit, and the person kind of freaked out and went MIA when they went work from home. And that eliminated the in-house. That's one example of it, where it eliminated all of a sudden, it's now we're back out, back to outsourcing fully, which is fine. And so, but it gave that flexibility to explore something, go, like, we're full on helping move internal, and then things happen. So that's happened several times where we balance that. And it allows you to, having both allows for a level of experimentation. You don't know, especially if you've never paid attention to intake like this, because if you haven't, then, there's this element of what do we, if we haven't focused on the data, we haven't focused on the processes, having both and experimenting with it just helps you find a right fit for your firm. And that's not a bad thing to experiment with.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's really about size and money and ROI. Like, your intake team is a cost, but it should make you money. And
Right.
that is a conversation that, you should be having, and we can help you have that conversation. So,
Yep. Very good. Well, good chat.
yes, good to see you.
Can't wait to circle back on your non-drama exit of an associate at some point here, maybe in a week. What do you think? A couple weeks?
Yeah. Yeah. We're throwing him a going away party on the 28th.
Like a
And
really going away, or
yeah,
like people are going to be grudgingly go get a piece of cake in the kitchen kind of going away?
no, like a party,
Cool.
like a proper send off.
Got it.
And yeah, so it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to talk through this, because obviously I've had a lot of people leave under a lot of circumstances,
Right.
and it'll be interesting to compare and contrast, and maybe come up with some best practices, because if you are a law firm owner and you hire people, like, people will leave and you will fire people. Like, it just
Right.
will happen.
Part of the deal. This is part of
Part
it.
of the deal.
Cool. Well, we'll come back to it. Thank you all for
Okay.
joining us. We talked a lot about, like, the course, for example, today. We'll throw links to that in the show notes below so you can take a look at it. And thank you all for joining us.
Bye.
Thank you, Billy.